So, with the use of social media continually on the rise, as well as the growth of new side hustles and businesses being started, it's really important that us founders are aware of how to use social media effectively to help grow our business. But what platforms should we be using, and how can we use these platforms effectively to actually grow our businesses? Well, today on the podcast, I'm joined with Grace Andrews, Marketing and Brand Director at Flight Studio, and also founder of The Social Climber, to share effective tips to help us grow our businesses on social media. Hello, Grace. How are you doing today?
Hi, Ola. So good. So happy to be here.
How are you amongst the whole chaoticness of what we call life?
It's so good. I mean, I feel so lucky to get to do what I do, and I enjoy it every day. But it's busy. It's busy.
Yeah, but at least you're still smiling.
Always. Always.
So I guess obviously I know you very well, but for those who've probably never heard of Grace Andrews before, please introduce yourself to everyone listening.
Hello, everyone listening. I'm Grace Andrews, as you kindly said, marketing and brand director at Flight Studio, which is home to the Diary of a CEO. For those who don't know, the Diary of a CEO is Europe's #1 podcast. It's hosted by Stephen Bartlett, who many may know through Dragon's Den or his social media profiles or his book. There's so many different avenues to discovering Steve. He hosts the Diary of a CEO, which reaches 40 plus million people a month.
Wow.
In its long form format and many more through social media channels. And yeah, I've been there for nearly 4 years now. So
Gosh,
I was
that long already?
I know, isn't it crazy? I was hire number 3. So it was his manager, his podcast producer, and myself. And we scaled this thing from, I came in at about 5,000 YouTube subscribers.
Shut up.
Yeah, and we're at just about to hit 7 million. So it's been a journey. It's been an incredible journey.
And this is exactly why I have you on the podcast today, because one, I want to learn some social media tips because I need to grow all things money, and also to help every other small business or business owner grow effectively on social media too. But I guess people are wondering, Grace Andrews, how the hell did you get to where you are now? So please share your story.
Where do I start? So I guess I was studying broadcast journalism. I was doing a master's degree, and I was absolutely fascinated by the fast-paced nature of the news, and especially in the broadcast world, which is sort of traditionally TV and radio, but more in modern times, social media as well. We get a lot of our news through apps, through social media streams, through all sorts. That's how we consume a lot of our news. And I was obsessed with like breaking the story.
Really?
I became obsessed with being like the first one to know. And even today, even though I'm not in that world anymore, my friends will text me, be like, "Do you have the scoop on this?" I'm like, "No, guys, I'm not there anymore." And I loved that. But that's where I really fell into the whole social media world, do social media journalism. And the quickest way to break a story was like through Twitter.
Yes.
So that was where I sort of dipped my toe in the world of social media, and I understood how to speak to the customer and the consumer in the quickest way and the fastest way.
Yeah.
Fun, but that sort of all came to an end as the pandemic started.
Classic.
So there was no jobs in journalism because everyone had shut their doors, obviously, and no one was willing to give anyone experience or let anyone in. So I was like, well, I'm not going to sit here twiddling my thumbs. I've just spent all this money on a master's. So what I did is I started working with small businesses locally whose physical brick and mortar shops had shut.
Yeah.
Most of them didn't even have a social media handle or a social media presence at all. So we were starting from scratch. And I said, look, I've never done this with brands. You've never done this before. I'll do it for free. I'd love to just help you build a presence online to keep your business alive during this like very tumultuous time. So I started working with some local business owners just to start scaling a presence so that they could keep connected with their community. And I absolutely fell in love with it. And that's kind of how my journey into social media started. And then I was building that, I was scaling that, but at the same time I'd started my own page to play around. I sort of treated it like a playground. So that's The Social Climber on Instagram. And I was learning the tips and tricks, but also talking about the tips and tricks at the same time. So I was really practicing what I preached and figuring it all out as I went. But it also became my digital portfolio. So what now we start to call as personal branding.
Yes.
That term didn't really exist 4 years ago as such. But it was my digital portfolio. So I had this evidence on this social media page that I could do what I said I could do.
Yeah.
Which was a real client generation tool. Like it was a lead generation tool. That's really what it became. And so much so that when this job came about to work with Steve, which was just from a LinkedIn post, if you were in the marketing world, you knew who Stephen Bartlett was.
Yes, 100%.
If you lived in Manchester, you knew who Stephen Bartlett was. But other than that, he wasn't the sort of prolific figure that he is today because he hadn't done Dragon's Den. The podcast hadn't exploded. So people within sort of niche worlds knew who he was. And it came up and I thought, if I'm going to learn from anyone, it's probably going to be him. If I'm going to scale my career, it's probably going to be learning from the guy that's just built a massive social media agency.
Yes.
And so I applied for this job, but really it was that digital portfolio through the Social Climber that I built that allowed me to gain entry into that role.
Yes.
Because I didn't really have to do too much selling. I didn't have to send a CV. I just had this platform. I said, look, here's my evidence. Here's my social proof. And that's what really opened that door for me. And yeah, as I said, we started with 5,000 on YouTube. I think we had about 250,000 on LinkedIn. So there was a presence. But I then came in and we've scaled everything with a wonderful team of experts in their own fields to this mammoth sort of media brand. And that's where Flight Studio comes in. We've kind of gone from Stephen, the Diary of a CEO, and now we're just about to scale multiple podcasts all at the same time.
So you just did a little bit of work then,
Just
here
a
and
little
there.
bit of
Just
work.
a little
Just a
dabble.
few late nights.
Incredible story though, and that just goes to show, one, the power of personal branding, two, using social media to open doors up. And I think those who are fortunate to start something, whether it was a side hustle or just a page to kind of showcase their skills in lockdown, have really reaped the benefits now 4 years later. Because for someone like me, I started All Things Money off the back of an Instagram page, which I thought was going to be like a 2-week hobby, has now turned into like my full-time job. So it just shows you the power of social media, doesn't it?
100%. Like I think about personal branding, such a funny term these days, and I still don't really know where I sit with it. There's this weird like Venn diagram between like influencer, creator, thought leader, personal brand.
Yes.
It all kind of means this kind of blurred lines, same sort of thing. But when I think about what it's done and served for me in my career, it's fast-tracked basically every stage of everything I've done.
Yeah.
It's allowed me to have conversations with people that if I tried to speak to them in person without that, would probably take like 5 years to reach through, or just be rejection. And having that, I see it as social proof or digital evidence. And why wouldn't you, when there are, all these people online, but in a room you might meet 10, 15 people a day.
Yeah.
You could say that same thought that you might be thinking and reach 100, 200,000 people in the same space of time.
Yeah.
So for me, it's like, it just kind of makes sense.
Yeah. No, I agree. And obviously, this is why today we have you on the podcast to talk about the power of social media and how we can effectively use it to supercharge our businesses. But before we delve into that, I want my listeners to learn more about Grace and who she is as a person, because obviously I know you, but not everyone else does. So I guess one of my first questions, quick fire question, is what's been your most expensive ever purchase?
Oh God, this is going to be very vulnerable. What's been my most expensive purchase? I mean, we've just had an offer accepted on a flat, which for me is like absolutely taken everything I've ever saved in my life. So that's making me feel all sorts of ways.
I love how we just skirted quickly on the fact that you had an offer accepted.
It's been such a journey and I had it's so many blind spots. Like I had no idea about any of it. This whole mortgage process, everything it's a real new learning experience for me. But it's very insightful, and I feel so lucky that everything I've done has allowed me to get to this stage.
Yeah.
I will caveat and say I am buying with my partner.
Yes.
There is no way on earth I would be able to do this by myself,
Yeah.
like financially or emotionally.
Yeah.
So I think that's really important to say, because if it was just me, it would be completely unattainable in London.
Yeah. Wow. And this is the thing, that's the reality of buying a home, but don't undersell your achievement because it's such a huge achievement. So huge congratulations, and we'll pray for a smooth, plain sailing journey. Now, I guess on the flip side, what's one piece of financial advice you wish you'd been taught sooner?
I mean, I don't know if it's financial advice, but this whole house process has been so eye-opening to me. Like I had genuinely no idea, and I still don't, and it feels like I'm playing with Monopoly money, like how this whole mortgage process works.
Yeah.
Like I don't know if I missed those. I mean, I don't think I did. I don't think it existed, but
No.
missed those lessons in school.
No, I didn't have a lesson personally.
But like,
about it.
where the hell what is this, and what is stamp duty,
Yeah.
and like why are they taking so much money
Yeah.
from me? And all of that side of things is solicitor fee, all of these things which everyone just assumes and once you go through it, I'm sure it becomes like clockwork and it makes sense. And I'm really lucky that I'm surrounded by people who sort of work in the industry and are helping me along. But I'm literally me and ChatGPT every night. Like, so can you run me through this next stage and create a timeline for what this needs to look like? Because I don't have a clue. Like this whole sector has been really eye-opening for me. And I kind of guess I wonder, like, would you need to know about it until you go through the process? But also I'm like looking at all sorts of resources right now, listening to your podcast, listening to all sorts of people's podcasts to try and educate me to not miss anything and not make any silly decisions. 'Cause unless you pay a fortune for someone to like advise you through the whole process, it's a little bit vulnerable.
Yeah, and this is the thing, and this is why I do what I do, because really we shouldn't be learning how a mortgage process works when we're buying our house.
When we're in it.
Yeah, literally. When you're spending thousands upon thousands of pounds of your hard-earned cash, because let's face it, no one's it's not taking a year for someone to save a house deposit. It's taking years, right? So you want to make sure everything you're doing is correct. So I think it's absolutely absurd that we're having to wait until we actually buy an actual property to learn the process. And this is why I do what I do. I'm sure there's other creators that do the exact same thing for the very same reason. But I guess obviously that's my bread and butter, but your bread and butter is social media marketing. So I guess because we're talking about it today on the podcast, for those listening, and you know, we're going to have to assume not everyone knows everything, what actually is social media marketing?
Oh my God, I don't think I've ever been asked that on a podcast before. What is social media marketing? I mean, it's marketing in general for me is the absolute crux of marketing is storytelling. And it's the bridge between product, brand, message, and listener, consumer, audience, whatever this person is that you want to engage with. And so social media marketing, if you put that in front, is just the choice of channel of which we're going to tell those stories through. So social media right now is dominated by probably 5 to 6 channels, but that mix of channels and platforms is evolving and changing year on year at the moment.
Yeah, no. Well, I'm glad no one's ever asked you that question before, Grace, because you're on a lot of podcasts these days. But I guess, obviously, you know, for those who are listening today and they have their own business or they're looking to maybe start their own side hustle, how important is it to use social media to grow that business?
I think the latest stat says that there are 5 billion people as of 2024 on social media, which is about 65% of the population, global population. So I kind of sit there and think, why wouldn't you?
Yeah.
If your intention is to reach people, because that's where most people are spending a lot of their time.
Yeah.
So for me, it's a no-brainer that if your goals are reach, growth, access, selling, conversion, any of the above, if the business goal is to sell something to people, it's free and it's the most effective platform right now in terms of reaching them. Is it your primary selling platform? Perhaps, maybe not. But if you are looking for eyeballs, it's the cheapest way to achieve them. So for me, it's obviously I'm biased. Like I work in it, but free and the best place to get reach for me is like a business owner's dream.
And I think reach is key there. I don't want to use the term viral because I don't think virality is necessary for business growth, but I think reach, like you said, you reach so many people using social media. It's wild. Like I have had my first dose of virality. It's only taken me 4 years. But I had my first dose, and it made me realize again the power of social media and the power of consistency, because my dream has always been to have, like, you know, one video go viral and then now I've got that 1 million followers. It hasn't been the case, but I feel like people want reach, and I guess social media is the best way to do it, isn't it?
You know what? Virality is a blessing and a curse, because it's amazing to get a spike in reach and gain all those potential eyeballs, but it can be so damaging in the long term. Because a lot of the time people go viral for reasons that aren't actually that closely related to where they want to be and who they want to be positioned as. So what it does is it alerts a load of people about you in a certain area of your creation. Loads of people then flood in. You might gain a 10% increase in your following, and those 10% are there for that piece of content. They're not there perhaps for what you are and what you're about to communicate to them. So one, there needs to be a whole re-education piece. You need to introduce yourself again, do that whole storytelling piece again. Really important after a peak of virality. But also, it's really common that what actually happens is you experience a peak and then you experience a drop in your following and engagement, because those people signed up for that viral piece of content and now you're talking to them about a course or you're talking to them about the podcast, and they haven't been there for that build or that all that storytelling that you've done for the last 3-4 years. So suddenly they disengage, which tells the algorithm people aren't interested in your content, and suddenly you see a plummet in engagement, or you see a whole shedding of followers, which again tells the algorithm people aren't interested. So a lot of the time I work with, when I worked with small businesses, but I also work with the brands on Dragon's Den that Stephen invests in.
Yeah.
And they'll go, oh my God, we got 2 million views on this video and we gained, 3,000 followers. And then their stats all flatline, or they plateau, or they drop. And you have to go through that sort of shedding process to then find your new audience and community. But I mean, that also is the difference between an audience and a community, right?
Yeah.
So you can have followers, but you can have a community, and followers are amazing. But are they going to buy from you? And are they going to tell their friends about you in the pub? I don't know.
Yeah.
So that's where you have this like incredible opportunity to reach, but then you still need to be thinking about your funnel and how you're going to direct them to convert into community, but also buyers, listeners, people who actually engage and back you up.
Yeah. And that's what we want at the end of the day. Like, followers are great, but are they bringing in the money? Like, some of us have got to eat. Do you know what I mean?
Well, like, are the followers going to pay the bills? Probably not, unless you're funneling them in a way that's going to get them on board to buy, and that's like a trust building exercise.
Yes. Yeah, no, I agree. And obviously, we both are aware of the fact that there's so many social media platforms out there. So I guess if there's someone listening today that's running their own business and they really do want to hone in, the use of social media, they want to use it intentionally, because I think it's one thing just being on social media for the sake of being on there, and actually using it intentionally. I think that's a really important word. What social media platforms do you think businesses should be on?
I can't give like a blanket answer here because it's so dependent on a few variables. The main one being who you're trying to reach.
Okay.
So there are, if we're thinking about the top main platforms that are currently in existence, we've got LinkedIn, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and X, Twitter.
Yeah.
You've then got your likes of Snap. You've got Twitch, you've got Threads, you've got all these kind of
so many
various sub platforms, but I'd consider those 5 sort of your main ones to consider. And it really depends who you're going after, because not all of those platforms have the same demographics living on there. And it also depends on how you want to create content. So I always say it's a Venn diagram between where do you enjoy showing up? Because if you don't enjoy it, you're unlikely to do it. But that also needs to be met with the other Venn diagram of, but what about your audience? Because you might love to create dancing TikToks, but if your audience spend 90% of their day on LinkedIn, you're going to have to find a compromise in the middle. So really it's all about who are you trying to speak to, not who you want to speak to, not who you think you're speaking to, but who do you actually want to speak to. Go to the platform where most of them are, and it's really easy to find that information on Google or wherever. But then how do you want to show up, and where do you want to be as a brand? Because really you've got to find that sweet spot in the middle. And there's not a one size fits all, but what I will say is if you're sort of starting out, or if you've been going for a while and you're experiencing this plateau, go back to 1 or 2 platforms and just focus in on them. You don't need to be on all 5. Like, my goodness, you don't need to be on all 5. Like, find the ones that make sense in that Venn diagram and then double down on them. In fact, double down on one if that's all you can manage. If that's what you can be consistent with, because I know so many small business owners, the problem is they are wearing every hat.
Yes.
They are doing logistics all the way through to marketing, through to budgets, through to admin, through to emails, through to hauling product. Like, they're doing absolutely everything. So for me to say, yeah, you should be on 3 platforms, posting 3 times a week on all of those platforms, is completely unsustainable. They'll do it for 2 weeks and then drop off a cliff. Like, if we're trying to achieve consistent growth across these platforms, even if that means 5 new people are discovering you a week to start with, you need to figure out what consistency looks like for you and what is actually sustainable on those platforms. Is that one post consistently on 2 platforms every single week, replying to 5 DMs, posting 2 stories? Like, what is the cadence that's realistic for you?
Yeah.
And then start there for a month. And then we'll speak in a month's time,
Yeah.
It's like, start so small. And if you can manage that, then we can start to level up. I really can worry about the people who come all in and then you don't hear from them for 2 months. And then the really hard part is to reignite that and bring that back to life.
Yeah, I agree. And I think what you said so beautifully is, who are you trying to reach? Because I think it's all good and well being on all 5 different platforms, but if you don't actually know who your target market or who your target audience is, then you're posting aimlessly for the sake of posting, rather than actually being intentional with that piece of content that you're spending hours if not longer, creating, right?
Intention is like the key word. You've absolutely hit the nail on the head, because strategy is like such a wishy-washy word. It means so much to so many different people, and actually it doesn't mean anything at all. All strategy means is like posting with intention. So I mean, in terms of social media strategy.
Yeah.
So really you just need to understand exactly who are the people you want to reach, where are they, what platforms, decide your platforms, and then reverse engineer solving their problems. So where are they, what are they talking about? Are you checking in like Facebook forums or Reddit or Twitter or X or whatever these platforms are to find the things and the problems and the concerns? You know, searching in Answer the Public, or trying to find the questions your target audience are asking. And then the simplest way is to create content that solves their problems.
Yeah.
Like that is at its like most basic form, all your strategy needs to be just to get you off the ground.
Yeah. Gosh. Now you're giving me food for thought. Ask the Public. I need to remember that one, actually. Someone else mentioned that to me the other day. So I actually need to make use of that, because I feel like when you're trying to create content, some days you just don't have the creativity, and sometimes you need to find ways of sparking that creativity, finding out what the public wants to know. So that's a really handy tip. But I guess another thing is social media trends, right? Because I feel like there's always something going viral. There's a new TikTok song that's like trending, etc., etc. You obviously create great content when it comes to finding social media trends. What other resources do you recommend people can kind of check out if they want to stay on top of these social media trends?
Trend is a really funny one, because I think especially for businesses, there are actually far and few trends that are like relevant for them to jump on. I think if you're looking for short-term wins and virality, by all means try every single trending sound and you will get it, because that's how the algorithms work.
Yeah.
But if you're looking for like longevity, being around for a long time, not a fun time, not a short time, and like genuine community who are going to be there and scale this business,
Yes.
there are going to be very few trends that are going to be relevant to jump on. What I think is probably more important, and as a small business with very limited time, and like time is our most valuable asset, right? I'd be trying to stay on top of the platform updates, because if you know what the platform is updating, that is where they're going to be focusing and pushing eyes. Because anytime Instagram releases a new feature, they favorite in the algorithm.
I see.
So how do we do that? Follow Adam Mosseri. He's the head of Instagram. He every week does a piece to camera for 3 minutes explaining exactly what they're focusing on at the moment as a company. You can go, TikTok have amazing resources where they highlight the trending audios, creators that are trending. Literally, they break down the trends that are trending. So I would look to the platforms first and foremost. They break down what they're prioritizing. There's amazing resources like socialmediatoday.com. There's amazing creators to follow who will release the updates as soon as they happen. Just find out where you want to source that from. There's loads of different ways, but lean into the platforms and their updates, because one, it gives you something new to try so you don't feel stagnant. So if you've been posting one reel a week for the last 3 months, and then Instagram last week release carousels that you can add text over, it gives you something new to try. So you're leaning into the platform trends, but 2, it allows your audience to experience something new from you, so they don't feel like they're getting the same content fed over and over, and it might spark a new creativity and an interest or innovation. So that's where I'd sort of look for that. And then the other piece is like, people do amazing, there are so many companies that do amazing newsletters. Sophie from Precision Marketer does a fantastic one. Daisy from Selfhood does a fantastic one. Giraffe Social Media, I think, do one. Buffer, Flick AI do a fantastic social media update one. And these people are summarizing all of the updates for you into a 5-minute read in a newsletter. So for me, newsletters for updates are my go-to. But you've got to find your go-to, whatever you can get into your rhythm, into your habits. That's going to allow you to just stay on top of the curve. You don't need to be jumping on every viral trend. Like, you really don't. But as long as you're up to date with the platform updates, then at least you're sort of not being left behind. Because the platforms are updating
all the time,
every week. Every week.
And it's too much sometimes. But I'm glad you said that it's not, you don't have to firstly be on every single platform. You don't have to be on every single social media trend. And you said virality can be a blessing and a curse, in the fact that, like, I feel like my growth hasn't been the fastest with all things money, but I've tried to stick true to why I'm creating the content. Like, I don't just want to do a dance just so I can be viral, but it's like I'm not dancing on TikTok to just for the sake of it. I'm creating content to educate people on their personal finance. I think it's really important, like you said, is to work out why you're creating the content, to be intentional, because again, what's the point of going viral if you're just talking about leaves but you actually want to sell beauty? Do you know what I mean? So
But what do those views mean other than they're feeding your ego?
so true.
Like, they do nothing. I can absolutely promise you the people going viral are not the same people who are getting warm leads in their inbox
Yeah.
each week or having customers actually purchase their items. Of course, there are going to be anomalies,
Yeah.
but the reality is you've got to build trust over a long period of time through a value exchange with this community in order for them to purchase from you.
Yeah.
So, like, that should be the only thing front of mind. Like, the numbers are going to come and go.
Yeah.
You're going to post content that's going to gain one follower, you're going to post content that's going to gain you 1,000 followers. Just keep trying new things, and the likelihood is a follower is a follower. It's a human.
Yeah.
I mean, most of the time, some of them are bots, but like, that's a real human who's engaging with you and your content, and your content has been created with a goal in mind.
Yeah.
What could be better?
And it's so true, and it's so funny because we're over the summer period right now. You naturally see a drop in engagement, right? So my LinkedIn content, I've been really struggling over the last couple of months because my engagement has been great. But honestly, with the low engagement I've had the most inquiries ever in my DMs on LinkedIn.
No one sees that.
Yeah.
So no one, people aren't shouting about it because they're not vanity metrics. But that's the thing that's going to shift the dial on your business.
100%.
That's what's going to put money in your back pocket. Like, that's the only factors that really we should be measuring. Everything else is purely for vanity and ego.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I guess you kind of said personal brand is a difficult one, right? So how important do you think it's important that CEO founders build their personal brand alongside their businesses?
So for me, personal brand is really important to focus on the word brand, because personal can mean anything from just sharing your life online. Brand brings intention, and it brings strategy, and it brings goals, and it brings direction. I think if you are someone who is looking to gain something that social media can provide for you, it's a no-brainer. That doesn't mean it's for everyone, and that doesn't mean everyone needs to be very public facing. So I don't think it should be a tick box activity for every marketing team to go, our CEO needs to be on LinkedIn.
Right.
Perhaps they don't. Perhaps that's not the best use of your marketing team's time. If you are a solopreneur and you have a business, it's going to be far more effective for you to tell that story through your personal page than it is through creating a brand page that you don't necessarily show up on and try to communicate through that, just because of the basic psychology that people buy from people. So if you're able to communicate your story effectively on LinkedIn, you're far more likely to get the emotional buy-in and the connection piece that means people are going to think of you when they need your services. So that's where it can become really useful. But it's not a must or a need for everybody.
Yeah.
I think if you have you must in the back of your mind go, I know what I'm trying to achieve with this.
Yeah.
So like for me, my personal brand, like I have a mission statement that I create at the start of every year because it's a brand. So mission, vision, whatever you want to call it. I think I can't remember word for word what mine reads right now, but mine is I want to gain leverage and become a well-known figure in the social media marketing space, so very specific area and industry, which means every time I create a piece of content, I think, is this helping me get there?
Yeah.
And how am I measuring that in the opportunities that come as a result? So am I, my KPIs are set within speaking opportunities, podcast opportunities, brand opportunities that are landing in my inbox as a result of the content I'm sharing.
Yeah.
So yes, you could look at it as like follower growth or likes or engagement, but really my goal, if I want to become a thought leader in the space and to become someone people think of when they think, who are the social media marketing leaders in the country and the world, is this post going to help me get there?
Yes.
So it really helps you be quite ruthless with the content you're posting, but it means, of course, you're going to kind of weave your way there.
Yeah.
But it means you still got that goal front of mind. So you're not posting that trend or that trend, and you're not looking too left and right or looking at really what anyone else is doing. You're paying attention to how this is helping you get to your intentional goal because it's a personal brand. And I think the personal brand is amazing because it brings that human touch. But you can do that through so many other means as well. It's just one means to telling a story.
Yeah.
And we've seen some like amazing companies who have started to do it and bring their founder story in, but there are some amazing brands who don't tell their founder story, and it's not necessary because they bring human voice and human storytelling through the branded content.
Yeah.
So it's not a necessity, and it's not the be all and end all, like by any means, but it can be it can be one of the really effective ways to communicate and tell human story through social media. But yeah, I really want to emphasize there are some amazing brands and businesses that it's not it's not a necessary channel in the mix. And that's fine. It depends what the goal is. What's the intention? Where do you want to go? Now let's evaluate the channels in the mix and go, okay, yeah, personal branding would make sense.
Yeah.
Like it all comes back to like the goal, the intention, the strategy.
Yeah. No, I agree. And I guess for me, like, yes, I'm building community on like social media, but for me on LinkedIn, I'm solely trying to sell myself as a personal finance expert, that businesses, people will come to me for all the tips and advice they need. So yeah, like you said, again, it comes back to your goal, your intent, etc., etc. But I think you just put that beautifully. So I'm not even going to try and recreate what you said. But I guess to kind of round up today's podcast episode, what are 3 top tips you would share with business owners today?
So my 3 top tips would probably be look at your content and ask yourself, are you posting for your target audience? Because I think a lot of the time the problem I find is small businesses, founders, creators have this what I call content gap between who they think they're reaching and who they're actually reaching.
Yeah.
And they're wondering why they're getting crickets in the comments and no one's replying and no one's engaging. And it's because actually you're creating content because you want to create it and it serves no purpose or no goal. Comes all the way back to this word, this intention. Why are you doing it? Is that serving your goal or is it serving your ego? That's what you need to really reflect on.
I'm guilty of that sometimes.
We all are. And every so often you're going to have a guilty ego post.
Yeah.
And it's going to serve whatever you need to serve. It's going to get the likes, the comments, the DMs, the engagement, whatever. And that's fine. I think if it's more often than not, that's where we're going to see an issue. And my second top tip would be if you can stay ahead of those platform updates, and you're going to be okay. If you can stay ahead of that wave that's always coming into shore, you are going to be able to be one step ahead of everyone else. And that means that in your consistency each week, you need to schedule in time to stay ahead. And I don't say that lightly. If you miss a week, fine. If you miss 2 weeks, not so fine. Like it is that imminent, the changes that are coming in.
Yeah.
So I would be looking at how you can integrate some sort, whether it's a podcast each week or whether it's reading a newsletter for 5 minutes before you go to bed, or whatever habit you can integrate into your routine to allow you to just stay just on that curve.
Yes.
Because it's coming in thick every single week and all the time. And then my last tip is like, if you are a busy business owner, how can you be leaning into AI, which we haven't even touched on in this podcast, to help you get there? Can you be using something like ChatGPT to help with your ideation, or even forming 60% of your copy, which then you can bring in the tone of voice and you can bring in the human too? What can you be using that can get you 65-70% of the way, so that you can get back to the bit which you need to be doing, which is building the business, but also adding that human touch at the end?
Yeah.
And there's so many tools, whether it's an AI video clipping tool because you've filmed a podcast and suddenly you've got 10 pieces of content from that, or it's an organization tool or something to filter through your emails. Like, what tools can you be leaning into that are going to allow you a little bit more time to do the social media part? Like that's my other tip. And just what can you be leaning into right now?
Yeah.
Because that's a whole nother wave, which is definitely not going anywhere. It's just getting bigger and bigger by the day.
Yeah.
And I really, really think that's where small business owners are going to be able to survive. Because suddenly you've gone from you to actually having this like second player, this second team member integrated into helping you get to where you want to go. And it's not going to get you the whole way. There's no, AI tools that I'm going to sit here and recommend and go, that is going to solve your content posting, that's going to solve your scheduling, that's going to solve your copywriting. But most of them now can get you probably 60% of the way. And that's 6% of time that you get back. So no brainer.
And it's funny you stole my last question because
Sorry.
you touched on tools which, like I said, brilliantly well spoken about. So I guess if you had to maybe mention a couple of tools off the top of your head, you obviously mentioned ChatGPT, but what other tools do you think small business owners could be leaning into? Just help with consistency, help with creativity, etc., etc.
I think the most important one, if you can, is a scheduling tool.
Yes.
So a lot of people, it's funny, people don't think they're using AI, and then I go, using a scheduling tool. They're like, yeah, I'm like, you're using AI. But there are some amazing ones. There are some more expensive ones. There are some cheaper ones. I've used them all. So there are loads out there. Sprout, Buffer, Flick is more of an AI one. Brandwatch, Hootsuite. I don't want to cancel any in case they want to work with me in the future. They're amazing. They all do kind of different things, but ultimately do the same thing.
Yeah.
And for me, that is the difference between saying you're going to be consistent and actually being able to get consistent. And a lot of the tools offer loads of AI features and plugins now. So maybe they can help with your copywriting, or they can help find the optimum time for posting based on your previous performance, or they might have a social listening tool. And then talking on the social listening tool, you really ideally some sort of research tool that you can lean on.
Yeah.
At its most basic form, something like Answer the Public is amazing. SEMrush is fantastic for sort of optimization, keyword tool searching, and they have loads of AI tools within there as well. There are loads of content creation tools out there. Vidio is fantastic for cutting up video, and there are so many evolving every single day. But find the ones that work for you, and find the ones that actually help make your life easier and don't burden you. But I think a scheduling tool and sort of a research tool, social listening tool would be the sort of ones that I'd be starting to look at initially.
Wow, I've made a note of all of those tools because I've heard of Hootsuite. I've used Hootsuite before. I've used Buffer. I've used Later. I've used quite a lot of scheduling tools. Those are the best ones to use as a small business owner because they help with the consistency. And also platforms themselves now tend to have like scheduling apps within them, like LinkedIn, Instagram. So there's really no excuse, guys, to be consistent, even if it is that literal one post a week. But Grace, you have been an amazing guest today on the podcast. I have learned a lot, and hopefully you guys listening or watching have learned everything you need to know to grow your business on social media as well. But obviously, Grace, like I mentioned in the intro, you create some great content, especially when it comes to just helping us stay on top of the trends, because I watch your videos just so I know what's going on, because I don't know half the time. So if anyone wants to kind of follow you on social media, where can they go to do so?
I'm still at the .socialclimber on Instagram, which I debate changing on a daily basis. And I'm just Grace Andrews on LinkedIn, and they're sort of my two main focus areas.
Oh, amazing. Well, guys, please check her out. She's absolutely amazing and she's smashing what she does. So if you want inspiration or just want to get nosy to see what she's getting up to, then please do give her a follow.